If you're so smart, why aren't you profitable? You probably think intelligence is needed to be a successful, profitable trader. But what if actually your intelligence was the one thing holding you back and it was making trading so much harder than it needed to be? So in this video, we're going to break down the paradox of intelligence and why the most intelligent people tend to be the worst traders. And then I'll give you a strategic way to finally start getting the results you want, to break out of this cycle and finally become a consistently profitable trader. And so first off, let's actually go through the relationship between your intelligence and your ability to trade. Most people probably think that as your intelligence increases, your skill of trading, your results will also increase with it. And if I were to ask you where you were on this curve, you'd probably say in the upper half that you are, smarter than the average person. And if you're watching this video, if you subscribe to me, you probably are smarter than the average person. But that also comes with a unique issue. So as we go along this curve, think of your skill of analysis increasing, you're able to see more opportunities, more ideas. But there is a problem with that. You're also able to see more risks, but in a faster rate. And you get to a point where your ability to see risk overcomes your ability to see opportunities, and your intelligence actually starts to hinder your ability to trade. And so when there's a gap between ability to see risk and ability to see opportunity, this creates analysis paralysis, fear, and just causes a bunch of resistance that stops you from ever taking consistent results, and you self-sabotage. It could be journaling, starting a new strategy, or even just taking a trade. You just get paralyzed by all the different things you could be doing, all the risks, all the issues that you see 5 steps down the road. And when this happens, when you're paralyzed by all this information, all these potential ideas and risks, there's just so much uncertainty. And the one way you try to fix this uncertainty, and so you spend more time researching, learning, watching YouTube videos like this one, trying to find a source of information that'll fix this issue, that will make you feel safe. And so think of this chart as you collecting knowledge, watching videos, collecting information. But the problem with this, you spend all your time watching videos, but not that much time actually trading. So how much action you take is disproportionately small to how much knowledge you have. You have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but your experiential knowledge is actually quite low. And when there's a gap between what you know and what you do, that creates stress, it creates even more overwhelm, and you just stay stuck. And this was the biggest mistake that I made in my first couple of years of trading. I tried to avoid this uncertainty, that I could be a losing trader, that I could be unprofitable for the first couple of years, because I had a need for control. I spent hundreds of hours watching YouTube videos, learning more, but not actually getting any better at trading. My results didn't improve at all. In fact, they actually got worse. And this was simply because I was trying to avoid these risks, avoid this uncertainty through consuming information, but it doesn't work. You're just going to go in circles, and most likely you're just going to overwhelm yourself. What you need to understand is that the learning is in the doing. Yes, some videos can be helpful, but if it's purely theoretical, it doesn't really matter that much. You need to take action on it. You can watch as many videos of Tiger Woods swinging a golf club. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to play golf like him. If you want to get the skill, you actually have to go to the driving range and hit some balls. And so you get to this point where you know everything about trading, you know all the concepts, the strategies, you watch so many videos, but you haven't actually taken that much action on it. Every time you try to take a trade or you try to pass a profit challenge, you inevitably blow it because your execution sucks. There's a massive difference between your theoretical knowledge and your actual ability to execute on that knowledge. But why do you avoid taking action? Why is there so much resistance to you actually doing the right things and putting in the work you know is required to become a profitable trader? And this brings us on to our next point about why having an identity as a smart person is actually holding you back. When you identify with being a smart person, you'll do anything possible to protect that identity. And so every time you lose a trade, you're wrong, your nervous system, your amygdala, will see that as a threat to who you are. Whenever you go through drawdown or a losing streak, that'll be immensely stressful and painful because it's attacking what you fundamentally see yourself as. So instead of it just being a learning period, you see it as a personal attack, you build resistance, and you avoid taking risks or taking action that could negatively affect this identity. So intelligent traders try to outthink drawdowns. They try to have certainty through more analysis, more concepts, more videos, but it just leads to more confusion. Because when you try to avoid losing trades, it also means you're trying to avoid learning. For example, the biggest mistake that traders make is that they try to go from a learning trader to an immediately profitable trader. And if you do this, you'll waste years of your time, because learning can just be defined as error correction. You make an error, you fix that error, you don't do it again, and then you've improved. And so if you're learning a skill, you're going to be wrong most of the time. And then so if you're learning trading, you're probably going to be losing most of the time. And that is a good thing. That means you're learning. But if you have an identity as a smart person, every time you're wrong, that negatively impacts that identity. And you're more likely to avoid risk exposure and taking trades and just learning in general. And so the quickest way for you to become a profitable trader isn't to focus on being a profitable trader. It's actually to get comfortable with being an unprofitable trader here. It's kind of like in basketball. If you're scared of missing a 3-pointer shot in a game, so you never take shots at all, or you're never going to get better. You need to take some risk, take some action to be able to learn and improve. So let's say you're learning, you take a bunch of trades using one strategy and you're consistently unprofitable. That is amazing. If you can figure out why you're not profitable, you can reverse engineer that, flip it to the opposite, and that will lead you to becoming a profitable trader. And please trust me when I say it is impossible to go from a learning new trader to a profitable trader without being an unprofitable trader first. So instead of trying to resist this, how can you fully embrace it and accept that you're probably going to be losing more often than not? Because the more errors you make, the more mistakes you make, the more opportunities you have to learn. But smart people tend to outthink this and try to avoid this phase. But this is one of the most important phases. And so this is actually why dumber people tend to get better results. They're not thinking about all the risks. They're not trying to outsmart uncertainty or avoid being wrong. And they don't see 100 failure points. They just simply take action. That ignorance allows them to build momentum, where if you have higher intelligence, you're constantly overthinking, overanalyzing, and trying to plan for every single scenario, which leads to friction, inaction, and resistance. Because I guarantee you already know enough to be a profitable trader. You know the one thing holding you back is your execution. And the reason you can't execute is because you're trying to avoid being a losing bad trader. You don't need more knowledge, you need more action. Because the more you take action, the more you build momentum, and the more you're able to learn, refine, correct errors, and get consistency. And it's simply because this is simply because a mediocre plan that is executed well beats a perfect plan that has never traded, or you just fuck up every time you even try to take a trade using it. So we've gone through all these problems, but how do we actually fix it? So I'm going to give you a step-by-step plan to implement, and if you actually take action, because remember, you don't need more knowledge. You need to actually take action on what I'm saying, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. First off, you just need to stick to one model or one strategy. You're not trying to trade 3 different things, not trying to trade the most optimal or perfect way. Just stick to one model, because your job isn't to be smart anymore, because that's the problem. Your job is to be repeatable. You have way too much knowledge and not enough execution. So stop consuming content that will allow you to reduce uncertainty, reduce that overwhelm, and start building experience. What I like to do with traders that I work with is impose an action quota, where I limit the amount of information they consume, but increase the amount of action they take. So what is a minimum number of reps that you can take each day, not videos that you watch? For example, 2 or 3 trades that you take each day, following that strategy, that model, and then journaling them in as much detail as possible, because you don't need more knowledge. Remember, you need more execution, more understanding. And the thing is, you're not allowed to optimize or change anything in your strategy. You're pretty much 30 trades away from becoming a profitable trader. It's as simple as that, because the issue is that you've never been able to execute consistently on an approach at the first sign of uncertainty or unprofitability. And we also want to decrease the gap between what you know and what you do, because that is the gap that is creating all that stress, that overwhelm, that self-doubt. You know too much, but you do too little. And the way to fix this is through your journaling. And you're not trying to journal the outcome. You don't care if the trade wins or loses. The main thing you're trying to get good at is following your rules, taking the same actions, and doing the same thing every single day. Most people think they need to feel a certain way or have a certain identity to take an action. So I need to feel energized to be able to go to the gym. But it's the opposite. Your energy, your emotion, your identity follows action. When you go to the gym, you feel more energized after that. When you execute consistently, you feel more confident after that. It reduces that uncertainty, that overwhelm. And so if you want the identity of a profitable trader, if you want being able to actually execute, well, you need to take the action first, and that emotion will follow. So purposely be a bad trader, purposely be retarded, because you're trying to disconnect from that identity as a smart person. The only way you can change your identity is through action and experience. You can't think yourself out of that. And an easy way to do this is to redefine success. Success isn't about winning a trade. It's about executing the plan every single day to the best of your ability. It's about logging the data and showing up and taking action, because you're trying to trade a skill, not trying to protect your ego. And every time you take a trade, you will feel a bit of pain. It will feel uncomfortable. But think of that pain as similar to the pain of going to the gym. It's like muscle soreness. You're working a muscle and you need that pain to grow. And every time you lose a trade, that just gives you an opportunity to learn and improve. But the main thing you want to be trying to avoid is inconsistent execution. This is the main thing holding you back, because how the fuck are you ever supposed to be consistently profitable if you can never consistently execute on a plan? So if you take a losing trade, but you follow your system, that is a winning day. And then that brings us on to the last point, is stop trying to figure everything out. You're not trying to choose the best solution right away. You have to let the data tell you what's the best solution. Trying to control or be certain that this strategy, is the best strategy. It's just a waste of time. Let the data tell you if it works or not. Let the data tell you what to change. Stop guessing, following your emotions, changing it from day to day. Stick to something for a long enough period of time where you can collect enough data to actually make an informed decision. Should I be trading this strategy, this entry model, this condition? The data will tell you. And so stop trying to outthink or avoid losing, because every time you lose, that is a new data point, that is a net gain for you to learn from that and become a better trader. Because remember, all learning is just error correction. And if you're learning, that means you're going to be wrong most of the time, and that's okay. It's not an obstacle, it's the path to consistent profitability. But as always, the hard part is actually doing it consistently. Think about what you can actually do today to take action on this information, because if nothing changes in your behavior, well, nothing's going to change in your results. If you want to watch a video on my strategy so you can implement that every single day, just watch this video here next. And if you want access to my mind maps or my custom journal, just join the free Discord in the link below, and you'll also be able to get access to that. But I hope this was helpful, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.